Hey everybody, Tony here with the next video in my crosswalking tutorial series. And in this video we're going to talk about demeanor. Our demeanor out on the streets. How we behave, how we carry ourselves, how we even appear to those who might be walking by and driving by. The reason I decided to address this subject was something that I experienced while I was in the hospital a couple of weeks ago for a minor heart procedure. I love that they use the word procedure. Well, it was a wonderful day of ministry for me and Maria in the hospital. We were able to put the gospel into the hands of just about everybody who attended to my care there at the hospital. Had a couple of meaningful conversations with a nurse and a staff member, and one of those staff members was a young lady by the name of Bianca, and she was one of the last people that served us while we were in the hospital. She would be the one who would wheel me out of the hospital to get into my car to head home. And as I was talking to Bianca, I made mention of the fact that, you know, if you ever see some guy standing on a corner with a cross that says stop and talk, well, that's me. And so if you ever see me and you've got more time and you'd like to chat, I'd love to talk to you. And her response really struck me. She said with a smile, she said, "Oh, good, now I know I won't be kidnapped." Now, she might have been saying that in jest, but if so, I think only partially in jest. Even as far back as my generation, maybe even before, children were told not to talk to strangers, right? And with the world as it is today, it seems that it's a much more dangerous place for people today than it was even 50 years ago when I was a small kid running around the neighborhood. And so it stands to reason that many people today are apprehensive about stopping to talk to a stranger, let alone a guy who's standing on the corner of a street with a 5.5-foot tall wooden cross that says stop and talk and is waving to everybody driving by. And so when Bianca said, "Oh good, now I know I won't be kidnapped," it struck me as to how important my demeanor is out there on the streets. I can't tell you how many times people who have stopped to talk to me, and now my estimate is well over 300 people have stopped to have conversations with me just since the pandemic started in March of 2020. More than 300 people have stopped to have conversations. And of those people, many of them have said, I've driven by you many times and I've thought about stopping to talk, and today's the day for me to stop and talk. Or I've driven by many times and you seem like such a nice person that I thought it'd be okay for me to stop and talk to you. As I've shared in the past, one young man stopped at the suggestion of a friend who had never stopped to talk to me. One young man stopped to talk because his friend said, "Hey, go talk to the guy on the corner with the cross, maybe he can help." And the help he needed was counsel as to what to do with information he had about a murder that had taken place in our community. Another young lady stopped to talk, and her question in tears was, "Does my 7-year-old daughter have brain cancer because of my sin?" That's the question she had for the man she had never met standing on the corner with a cross. And so as I think about these many conversations that I've had, as I think about my interaction with Bianca in the hospital and what she said about her fears of being kidnapped being set aside now that she's met me, again, it stressed to me how very important it is that I have a good and godly demeanor while I'm out there on the streets. So what does a good and godly demeanor look like out on the streets while you're crosswalking? Again, many of the people who drive by you are likely never to stop and talk. Many of the people who walk by may avoid your corner altogether just so they don't have to say hello to you. But there will be those who will drive by and they are going to draw conclusions about you, right or wrong. They're going to draw conclusions about you based on how you carry yourself on the streets. So what does a good demeanor look like? Well, for one, it doesn't look like this. I've mentioned this before. You should carry yourself as if you genuinely enjoy doing what you're doing. Now, you shouldn't be putting on airs. You should actually enjoy what you're doing, or why are you out there? If it is a laborious task for you, if it is boring to you, if you really don't want you to be there, but you're out there purely out of obligation, then my encouragement to you is to go find something else to do. But our face should be an expression of what's going on in our hearts. Ray Comfort often would say, let them hear the love in your voice and let them see your love and care in your eyes. And so when you're standing out there waving to people as they're driving by, the joy of the Lord should exude from you. They should see your joy in the smile on your face, in the look in your eye, in the enthusiasm of your wave, all of which you're doing while exercising self-control, of course. But you should carry yourself as someone who actually enjoys being there, who wants to be there. Your demeanor should be such that those who would never think of stopping to talk to a stranger sees something in you that would say, you know what, that seems like a nice person. I think I'm going to stop and talk to them. I need to talk to somebody. It might as well be him. It might as well be her. So you should have an appearance on your face that looks like you love God and love people, that you actually want people to stop and talk to you. And if they do stop to talk to you, what they're going to experience is a friendly conversation. In a previous video, I talked about how to handle and respond to hecklers, whether pedestrians or motorists. So I won't go back over all of that now, but I would encourage you, if you haven't seen that video yet, to watch that video on handling and responding to hecklers. What I will say, though, is that if you're going to call out to motorists, whether they are positive folks driving by, giving you a wave or a honk of the horn, or they are a nasty heckler, your demeanor should be such that you don't come across as angry. As I've testified before, this was an issue for years in my evangelistic ministry. I was an angry street preacher, all the while testifying that I wasn't angry with people. I wasn't fighting with people. I was fighting for the souls of people. But in reality, I was an angry guy. And so if you're going to call out to people, particularly hecklers, you should not respond in kind. You should not revile when reviled. And your tone of voice should be whimsical. It should be positive. Even when I call out to somebody, when they say, "Hail Satan," and I respond with, "He's your father," I try to do that with a whimsical tone of voice. Because again, remember, while the person you're addressing may understand that you're talking to them and understand the context of what you're saying, the other motorists and the pedestrians in that area, they're not going to have a clue as to why you're saying what you're saying. And so everything that comes out of your mouth ought to sound positive, even if you're offering correction, even if you're challenging somebody. Your tone of voice should be such that you come across as positive, that you come across as not being an angry person. If Bianca saw me as she was driving by and already had in her mind that Well, I don't think I'm going to stop because I don't want to get kidnapped. Well, if I'm standing there on the corner and flecks of spit are coming out of my mouth because I'm yelling at somebody because I'm so angry, well, that certainly isn't going to make someone like Bianca want to stop and talk to me. So your tone of voice should always be positive. You need to be mindful of that. And again, that's one of the reasons why I use an amplifier while I'm out there. And again, in an upcoming video, we'll go over equipment. But one of the reasons why I use an amplifier is so I don't have to yell. So that when people are driving or walking by, they're not seeing my veins popping out of my neck because I'm raising my voice so loud to be heard over moving traffic. By using the amplifier, I'm able to speak in normal tones. I might raise my voice a little bit, but not to the point of yelling and not to the point of sounding angry. Something else to consider is talking with your hands. Well, why is that? Well, if you're involved in a conversation with somebody on a corner, the people driving by, they're not going to be able to hear that conversation, but they are going to be able to see the conversation happening. And if my hands are flailing about and I'm animated with my hands, and I do talk a lot with my hands, maybe it's the Italian in me, all 11% of it. I do talk a lot with my hands. If people driving by seeing you being very demonstrative with your hands, they might think you're angry. They might think you're yelling at the person that you're talking to, when in fact you're just being emphatic, or you're gesturing as you're painting a picture, as you're sharing an illustration or something, or trying to make a point. You're not angry at all. In fact, you might be talking demonstrably because you're excited, because the person in front of you is understanding what you're saying, and you can see conviction in them, and you're getting even more intense in the conversation because you really are fighting for the soul of the person in front of you. But for motorists passing by or someone walking on the opposite side of the street, if your hands are all over the place, they might think you're mad. They might think you're angry with the person you're talking to. And what is that going to do to their thoughts about stopping at a later date to talk to you if they think you're angry? So I try to be mindful of that. I try to be mindful of my body language. I try to be mindful of the use of my hands when I'm talking. I always want to try to come across as positive, even in being demonstrative with my body language. For the people, primarily for the people who can't hear what I'm saying, but they're just driving by at 25 to 55 miles per hour and they're seeing me as they go by. I don't want them to think I'm being angry by my body language. All right, one more subject I'd like to cover in this video regarding demeanor. And if you are watching this and you've got questions that come to mind or comments you'd like to make, please leave those questions and comments below. Love to either answer those in upcoming videos or maybe even shoot you an email to try to answer those questions. So please, if something comes to mind, please leave a comment or question below. Last thing I'd like to cover is our demeanor when we're actually engaged in a conversation with someone on the corner. I just spoke about our body language and what have you. Oftentimes when I'm on a street corner, people will see me there and they'll honk and they'll wave. And it seems to be even more enthusiastic when I'm actually engaged in conversation with someone. There are people in my community, obviously Christians, but others as well, who are encouraged by seeing me on the corner, and they get even more encouraged when they see that people are actually stopping to talk to me. You know, it's funny, as a side note, many times people have stopped to talk, and their question is, do people ever stop to talk to you? And my response sometimes is, you mean like you? And then it hits them, it's like, oh yeah, I stop to talk. I guess people do. But people will honk and they'll wave, they'll call out, God bless you, things like that while I'm involved in a conversation. Also, the heckling gets more intense as well when I'm in a conversation. Those who don't like me being out there to begin with dislike it even more when they see that I'm actually talking to people. So I'm careful as to how I respond to passing motorists when I'm engaged with a conversation with someone else. I don't want to give the person standing in front of me to think that my reason for being out there is to have people honk at me and wave at me and say good job or God bless you, that I'm out there looking for attention. I want the person in front of me to believe that they are the most important person in my world at that moment. And they ought to be the most important person in my world at that moment. I'm communicating the gospel of Jesus Christ to them, or they're a genuine follower of Jesus Christ that I'm trying to encourage in some way. And so I don't respond to every honk of the horn. I don't respond to every wave. I might do that a couple of times. And hecklers, I don't respond to hecklers at all. I don't respond to hecklers at all when I'm engaged in a conversation. Because I don't want to run the risk with the person in front of me to have them think that, oh wait, he's one person when he's talking to me, and now he's in an argument with a person driving by. I don't want to give any kind of wrong impression that way. I don't want to give the heckler any attention whatsoever, and I don't want the heckler to distract me from where I'm at in the conversation. I also don't want the heckler to distract the person that I'm talking to. Sometimes if a police officer drives by, I'll wave to them or I'll salute, primarily to let them know that I'm okay. Because the officers in my community, they do look out for me. Officers have stopped before and say, hey, Tony, if you have any problems, give us a call, let us know. We're nearby. I've had officers do that. And I've had officers stop and say, hey, I appreciate you being out here. And so they are looking out for me. And so, you know, when an officer drives by, if I'm engaged in a conversation, I might give them a quick wave or a salute just to let them know, hey, I'm okay. But beyond that, I try to keep my interaction with motorists down to a bare minimum when I'm engaged in a conversation, because I want that person in front of me to know that they're important to me. I'm glad that they stopped, and what's happening in our conversation is the most important thing to me right now. All right, so said quite a bit in this video regarding demeanor. I hope you found some of it encouraging or instructive. And again, if you have questions or comments, just let me know below. Until next time, God bless. Thanks for watching.